This is Set Him Free, Chapter 9. Roman had not returned to the palace for 5 days. Everyone within the kingdom had tried not to fret in knowing this, but it wasn't difficult to see the state of restlessness that had enveloped the palace walls. At this rate, there were only a few possible explanations to Roman's disappearance, and hardly any of those scenarios ended in anything promising. Far too much time had passed for the prince to have gotten lost within the city. Logically, Roman was a goner, and Logan could never hate logic any more than he did now. Ever since the prince hadn't returned, Logan had spent every waking moment in the palace library. He had retrieved immense amounts of books, creating towering stacks that encompassed entire corners of the space. No one else dared to enter the room once the advisor had set foot inside. Logan would not let himself be interrupted. He tore through novels and marked maps that detailed the kingdom streets. Ink stains were splattered across his palms and clothing, something that would normally leave him distraught, now the last thing on his mind. There were crashes of journals falling to the floor after being piled haphazardly and thrown every which way, the noises of which would often startle anyone passing by the library doors. Logan's fingers had become strewn with paper cuts from turning pages too quickly, and he couldn't remember the last time he had eaten or gotten any sleep. There was no time for such privileges, not when his best friend was gone. Gone, with the chances of ever returning growing slimmer with each day Logan was left without answers. So he kept searching. He searched through every piece of information he could find. Maps, records of criminal activity, citizen reports taken throughout the city, anything that could offer him some sliver of an answer. But still, there was nothing. Every employee of the blacksmithing shop had been taken in for questioning, and they all gave the same answer. The prince was in the forge one moment, and the next he had sprinted out, never to be seen after. Logan knew there had to be something else to the story, a motive, an outside factor, anything. The problem was, no one knew what that something else included. He kept searching. If he could just work harder, if he could get over his distractions, then he could find the answers. After all, it had been Logan's muddled thoughts that caused him to be more unaware that morning, hadn't it? The thoughts stuck in his head with a stabbing clarity. He had grown too soft, allowed his emotions to hold sway. It was in his own lack of regard for the rules that had resulted in Roman's disappearance. If he had only kept him from leaving that morning, or if he had insisted that Roman discuss his plans with Queen Elena before ever stepping foot outside the castle, maybe Roman would still be here. That had to be it. It had to be all his fault. What other solution could be logical? Did it even matter, as nothing seemed logical to the advisor anymore? A soft rapping upon the library doors aroused him from his thoughts. He shot a quick glance towards the sound, yet paid it no mind, and instead dove deeper into his work. Logan was in a frenzy now, ripping pages from their bindings. His eyes grew heavy, tempting to give into his own exhaustion, but he pushed the feeling away. He plastered parchment together as if it would form some kind of mural, one that would reveal everything he seemed to question. The soft knock upon the doors sounded again, and it cracked within Logan's ears, sending a rattle through his brain. He did not answer it, too determined to stop. The sound returned once more, and this time Logan spun around, unable to take the unbearable racket it constructed within his head. "What?" he barked, voice edging on hysteria. The door slowly opened, Patton's soft blue eyes peeking into the room and quickly filling with sorrow. "Oh, Logan." "I do not need your sympathies, Patton. There is simply not enough time." Logan looked down again, re-immersing himself in the countless writings. Beneath the frantic turning of pages, Logan could hear Patton step closer. "Logan, dear, when was the last time you slept?" "Unimportant." Patton's brows twisted in worry upon hearing this. He made no attempt to move any closer, though his words emerged with a greater urgency. "Isn't it time you took a break? With everything the kingdom's been going through, I wouldn't want you to overwork yourself." "I am not overworking." Patton flinched at the sharpness of Logan's tone. "I am doing what needs to be done for the kingdom." "The kingdom, or the comfort of your own thoughts?" Logan froze, his lips pressed into a thin line. A knowing concern now shone on Patton's face. "Everyone is worried. We all know the importance of each waking second, but that doesn't mean you should lock yourself away and toil until you drop." "I can and I will. We need answers, and right now it seems as if I'm the only one willing to seek them. Roman is out there. I don't care what the maids whisper to each other as they pass the halls. I don't care about the horrid rumors. Roman is still alive and most possibly in great danger, so I intend to find him, even if that means searching every book in this gosh-forsaken library." "Logan, please, you have to stop. You're getting in your own head. Can't you see it? Just come rest for a moment. I can help you." Patton stepped forward, placing a hand upon Logan's wrist. "No!" The advisor wrenched his arm back, tearing it from Patton's touch. "You cannot tell me what to do when no one else is making an effort to find our friend. At least I actually care that he's gone." Patton stilled, face going pale. He locked eyes with Logan, still holding his arm outstretched. Logan's breath hitched, and his eyes became shiny, his voice now a mere whisper. I can't give up on him." Logan fell into sobs. Patton's expression softened. He only had to take one step forward before the advisor collapsed into his arms, hiding his face in Patton's golden brown curls. Tears fell onto Patton's shoulder, turning the fabric a slightly darker blue, and he held tighter. Logan was quite taller than him, still managing to tower over Patton despite being hunched over. Carefully, the messenger brought them both to the floor, continuing to cradle Logan in his arms. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, rubbing circles onto Logan's back. Logan began to calm, his breath slowing as he shifted into quiet sniffles. Gentle reassurances were whispered into his ear, and he allowed Patton to hold him, knowing that the messenger probably needed the comfort as well. Eventually, he tapped softly on Patton's shoulder, who gently brought his arms to his sides. They locked eyes for a moment, absorbed within the silence of the library. With a hushed whisper, Patton gripped Logan's hands in his own, intertwining their fingers. "It's going to be all right." Logan wanted to believe him. Gosh, he really did. But his mind simply did not accept such optimism, leaving him spouting out words before he could stop himself. "But what if it's not?" he blurted, before he could stop himself. "What if it will never be okay again?" A pained sorrow crossed Patton's face. He squeezed Logan's hands, not enough to hurt, but to the point in which Logan could feel Patton's worry. "It will be," he finally said. "We're going to find him, I promise." "It's all my fault." "Logan, that's not true, you know that." "Do I?" he muttered. "I shouldn't have let him leave without Elena's permission. I should have been more cautious." "Hey, look at me." Patton suddenly lifted a hand to his cheek, bringing Logan to meet his gaze. "Do not blame yourself for this. None of us could have predicted what would happen. All that matters now is that we work together. He emphasized the word. To make things right. A small laugh escaped his lips. Besides, I don't think Roman would have listened to you anyway if you had told him not to leave. That boy is too stubborn. The advisor snickered, nodding gently. Looking down to their joined hands, he felt a hot blush creep across his cheeks. He rose to his feet, carefully lifting Patton along with him. Gently, Logan brushed the curls from Patton's face and pressed their foreheads together. Ever so slightly, he lifted his head so that the messenger's golden ringlets barely brushed against his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. A buzzing sensation overcame Patton, radiating from his face to the tips of his fingers. "Oh, glad I could help." A pink blush surrounded his cheeks, leaving him so suddenly without words. "Now, why don't we see if we can get you some rest?" "I'm fine, really. I've just been a little emotionally charged lately." Patton rolled his eyes. "You're about to fall over, Logan." The advisor scoffed. "I am near no such thing." He began to stride forward, stumbling almost instantly. Patton thrust forward, swiftly catching Logan before he hit the ground and shooting him a concerned glance. "Fine," Logan conceded, stifling a yawn and shifting his weight so that he was partially leaning against Patton. Together, they exited the castle library, making their way to Logan's room. They passed through several corridors, the library being on the complete opposite side of the castle from the sleeping quarters. On their way through, the sounds of shouting became more present, echoing from the throne room at the end of the hall. "I don't care what you have to do. Search harder." A woman's voice emerged, nothing more than a mere mumble. "But, ma'am, I'm from Drapia. I'm only granted visitation in the kingdom for work. I can't pass any other Elden gates." "Then find someone who can." "Yes, ma'am. Your Highness, I'm so sorry." She scrambled out of the room as fast as she could, nearly running into Logan and Patton as they passed by. This caught Queen Elena's attention. "Mr. Oriel, just what do you think you're doing?" The two froze, turning to face the open doors of the throne room. Elena gestured them inside, and dread began to pool in Logan's stomach. Patton seemed utterly unfazed, responding with a smile. "We were just headed to the castle bedrooms, Your Majesty." "I can see that." Elena's expression did not soften in the slightest, instead growing possibly even more infuriated as her gaze drifted to the advisor. "And Logan, where have you been? We are merely in pieces, and you decided it would be a good time just to vanish?" Logan shrunk back, though Patton took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. He took a deep breath, standing taller and locking eyes with Elena. "No," he stated clearly, fighting every urge he had to crumble then and there. "In fact, I was attempting to figure out your son's location." "And now you've decided to stop? You are to continue as you have been doing. I don't want to so much as encounter you again until I can see my son in front of me." Logan's shoulders slumped, and the circles surrounding his eyes almost seemed to grow darker, though he didn't offer any distraught expression, despite his exhaustion. "Right. Apologies, Your Majesty." He turned to leave, though Patton caught his sleeve, offering him a reassuring smile. "Actually, Queen Elena, Logan has been working tirelessly to find answers, and he was merely checking to ensure that the rest of the castle was in order during his absence. I believe it would be in everyone's best interest if we allowed Mr. Sage to rest. If you have any objections to this, you can bring your questions to me. You have no authority to insist on such things. Elena glared sharply at Patton, who didn't at all falter. Your Highness, with all due respect, you are very much wrong. Logan sucked in a breath, his eyes fleeting between Patton and Elena. He placed a hand on Patton's shoulder, trying his best not to appear intimidated by both the figures in the room. Patton, I can keep working, I'll be fine, he whispered, though the messenger instantly shushed him. My queen, I'm going to bring to your attention that your advisor has not gotten a wink of shut-eye in 5 days. This is no longer a question. You will temporarily excuse him from his duties. Excuse me? You heard what I said. Patton glared right back at the queen, leaving Logan to severely question how the messenger was still alive after such a statement. The two locked eyes. One could practically see the flames on the side of Elena's face, though Patton was fighting back with an equally unmoving expression. The queen rose to her feet, making her way over to Patton with the strides of a jungle cat. Patton! Logan was now pulling on his sleeve, trying to avoid the conflict that was clearly brewing. Patton ignored the gesture, standing his ground. I could have you exiled from this kingdom right here and right now, Elena sneered. You have no right in testing my patience, Mr. Oriel. Patton began to giggle, much to Logan's horror. Oh, really? Miss Elena, I don't mean to be rude, but that would be absurd, as no one within these walls has any notion of our kingdom's alliances. Of course I do. We are in close camaraderie with Lunaris, Drapia, and Ivanwood. Don't mistake me for a fool, boy. I would never, Your Highness. Still, I hope you know that deals have to be made to keep these relationships, ones that seem to be arranged by me. Patton beamed. I truly don't mean to rain on your parade, but you may need someone to maintain those relationships, unless you want a war on top of all of this chaos. Elena's jaw dropped, her eyes reflecting the same appalled expression Roman sometimes got when he was teased about his guard abilities. Something shifted in her, though, a slight hint of hesitance within her narrow eyes. One full night's rest, she hissed through her teeth. Then he will get back to work. Of course. Thank you so much. Patton flashed her a bright smile, gently nudging Logan towards the room's exit. Once the doors had closed behind them, Logan turned to face Patton, his eyes wide. What? How? Shh. Patton smiled, placing a finger to Logan's lips, who immediately fell silent. I figured someone had to give Elena a taste of her own medicine at some point. Now we need to get you some sleep. He took Logan's hand, the two walking the rest of the way to the sleeping quarters. Once the advisor reached his room, he immediately crawled into bed, pulling the covers up over his nose. Thank you, he whispered, his eyes wrinkling fondly before fluttering closed. Get some rest. I'll keep searching for Roman in the meantime. Patton offered reassurance, though Logan had fallen asleep the moment his head hit the pillow. The messenger had to hold back an endearing grin that tugged at the corners of his mouth. It was all just too precious to process. Carefully, Patton pulled the door closed and made his way up to his workspace. It sat in a tower not too far from where he stood, bathed in the light of soft candles. The cedar wooden door offered a small creak as he edged it open, breathing in the sweet smell of lavender and parchment. Patton shuffled to the edge of the room, glimpsing at the desk and letting out a gasp. Upon the wooden desk lay a cream envelope, the name Patton Oriel scribbled on front. This has been Chapter 9 of Set Him Free. Thank you so very much for listening, and I will see you next time for Chapter 10.